but actually doing all of these things also forms a link directly with him as a master, doesn't it?
It absolutely does, because, and you must have experienced that yourself. And what happens if you follow the teachings diligently and earnestly, and the practices and the work given to you through the offices of your master? So he's not physically alive, but you're still doing that now. Anyone can do it now. You are, by your diligent study, practice, work, and support financially in certain cases for these non-profit missions that we do, you are creating a link with him.
The Spiritual Freedom Show with Richard Lawrence, where politics is not the answer, materialism counts for nothing, and spirituality will set you free.
Richard.
Darren.
So we're engaged here in a beautiful, I think, a two-part special here about Dr. George King around his birthday, which was on January 23rd. And today I think I'd like to focus, as we described last time, on sort of being able to form this link with the master, even if you haven't been able to physically meet them in your life. So that's what I'd like to focus on today. But before we do that, I know there was something at the end of the last show that you wanted to bring in.
There really is something, because as you know, I'm very... almost fanatical, I hope not fanatical, but getting towards that, about the galaxy. And we've talked about that before, and how important it is, and what we can actually play a part in some tiny, tiny way affecting the galaxy, this great intelligence, which is allowing itself to manifest. Doesn't even have to manifest on the plane of preservation, and we can cooperate by bringing about our evolution and even more the evolution of all. So that's one thing, but I haven't focused on the supreme lords of karma, which are the beings who manage karma in the galaxy. And it's brilliantly described in the 9th blessing, and some of our viewers and listeners will know that, others won't. If not, I strongly recommend it. But what I'd like to do, because this does relate to Dr. King, because as we said last time, he was a karmic yogi, not just a karma yogi, he was a karmic yogi.
Interesting. Okay, that's something.
Everything was a karmic move, in a way perhaps that's unique. I think it probably is. I'm not saying others didn't make karmic moves. I mean, just to name one, the Master Jesus made brilliant karmic moves. Very successfully, despite the appearance of being killed and so on. Very, very successfully. But his every move was a karmic, strategic, logical, highly intuitive decision that he would make. Even if it was highly intuitive, and I used to, as I mentioned before, I was on call for him, so I got many phone calls, and when I say Alison would be there too, because we shared a room, and so the phone would ring, and it would be 2 a.m., very frequently 2 a.m. Sometimes it would be a command. I mean, I don't want to put people off whatever they're doing, but I once got a call while I was in the bath. I had to answer the call whatever time it was of the day or night. And so I got a call, and I was actually in the bath. And I don't recall right now his exact words, but they were some words along the line, "This is an emergency situation." He spoke like that. It could almost have been So I was in the bath hearing this, and I actually stood up and took this, and actually had to go down the road and start the SCR there and then. I had to sort of put a dressing gown on, put on, I think, some gum boots. I think it might have been raining, and a hat and a dressing gown and some gum boots, Wellington boots. Walked down from above the health food shop where we lived, just a few doors down. And it was in the middle of the night. It was a late bath I was having, we worked very late in those. And it would happen, of course. A policeman was walking along.
Of course, at that moment.
And there I was in my dressing gown, my gum boots and my hat. I think it was a gum boots and a hat, or maybe I'm just exaggerating. But it was that type of thing. And I remember saying, "Good morning, officer." He said, "Good morning," and then walked on. Anyway, started the SCR. But these calls could come at absolutely any time at all. And I don't know how I even got onto that, but he was, well, I suppose what I'm illustrating is everything was a karmic move. Other times he might call me, and he'd say something like, "Just called you for a gossip." And by the way, he didn't mean gossip in the sense of
gossip.
He didn't like gossip. He didn't like rumours. He didn't like the rumour mill. He like the mills of God,
Yes.
which
Yeah.
grind exceeding small, which is karma. So it was a chat is what he meant by that. And we would just chat. So I used to go to bed with a list by my bed of topics.
Of things to talk
Because when
about.
you wake up at 2 a.m, he'd say to me something like, because it was like his cocktail hour.
I see.
Over
In
there,
LA.
it'd be 6 p.m.
Okay, yeah,
just
yeah.
before dinner.
Yeah.
And he wanted to talk to me. And it was an honor. Every time he'd say, am I disturbing you? And every time I'd say, no, Master, it's fine.
Yeah.
And once he said, I do remember, he said, what's going on there? And I'm thinking, Alison's lying there. But I had a list. I know what he meant. So I'd have newsy items because sometimes at 2 you've just woken up.
You had to think of everything.
So it was quite a training. Even to this day, I have some thoughts at 2 a.m, 4 a.m. And I try to stay alert to them if that happens.
I see.
Not advocating it. I think some people say it's not good for your sleep patterns and so on. But I've certainly found, if it's inspiration, it can come. Doesn't go according to clock time. It goes according to, hopefully, God time. And it'll come whenever it comes. Anyway, the point I want to get to, though, he was a karmic agent. That's what he was. And you can, to come to your topic of today, we can still follow him. We can still, if we go far enough, become a disciple of Dr. George King now, even though he's not physically with us. And one can follow his pattern, and it depends how far you want to take it. It's a choice. Or you could just have a kind of a curiosity in him and take an interest. The stronger you do, the deeper the link you forge. But then, what he's done, though, and what the teachings through him have done, especially the 9 freedoms, but also the 12 blessings and others, they've taken it to another level because they have said, not only then will you be doing, say, good in the world, helping people, even helping the planet, to some degree you'll be helping these great karmic gods, these lords of karma. Now, I would like to read something about the supreme lords of karma.
Yeah, right.
And this is after the 9th blessing, and this is the Master Jesus, who said this: do not let a moon set or a sun set before you think upon them, before you help constructively these mighty ones. Now, I'm going to stop right there because I know you've heard this many times, and I've heard it many times. And it's taken me, I've heard it for 50 years and read it for 50 years. And I haven't sort of thought, oh my gosh, today I've got to constructively help
I'm
the
just
Supreme
thinking the
Lords
same
of Karma.
thing. Yeah,
and
it's
I'm going to
like-
guess a lot of people watching this haven't thought, hey, have I constructively helped today the Supreme Lords of Karma?
Yeah, that's
I didn't know I could.
Yeah, exactly.
How could I help these ones?
But also just, it's like, wow, it's not just me going about my life anymore. It's like I'm actually part of this enormous whole that I'm starting to realize. And actually, I feel like almost like a responsibility in actions. It's not just go about whatever you want in your life. It's like, no, I need to be living my life in such a way that I'm doing what you just described.
But this was the lifeblood. This was the absolute raison d'etre of Dr. King, even before he came to Earth, but certainly on Earth. He knew it, and he knew how to do it.
Yeah.
Anyway, the Master Jesus goes on here. So I'll say that again. Before you help constructively these mighty ones, by the strict control of your own thoughts and actions.
Yeah.
Bring these within the great law, and you'll be praying a greater prayer than that of words. So that's another thing. It's even greater than a prayer. It doesn't say greater than prayer, because it might be prayer, but a prayer of words. So, it might be a way of controlling your thoughts and actions, prayer. It doesn't rule out prayer, but it doesn't limit it to prayer. Just this fact that you're controlling your thoughts and actions strictly is helping the Supreme Lords of Karma. Now, I think we'll go into why that is in a moment. Goes on to say this: be good, be tolerant, be kind, be merciful, be gentle, be humble, and you will be great. I think that's a familiar concept, at least. It's wonderful words, but a very familiar concept from Christian thinking, you might say.
Sure, yeah.
But then he says something that isn't said anywhere else. I don't think it's said anywhere else outside the teachings of the Aetherius Society, because the next sentence is this: then you will be helping the sacred ones, whose names may not be mentioned even in closed session. In other words, you'll be helping the supreme lords of karma. That's a whole other ball game. It's a whole other reason to do it. Now, you can study the great aphorisms of Patanjali, and you'll find in there qualities that he mentions which will help you to deal with certain weaknesses.
Okay.
So we can look at this, be good, be tolerant. These are all good things. Be kind, obviously good. Be merciful. We talked about forgiveness the other day. I think I was saying, actually, forgiveness is better for the person who forgives than the person who's forgiven in some, certainly karmically, anyway.
Yeah.
And so be merciful. It's good for us. Be gentle, be humble, and you will be great. So these are all great qualities. They're also ways, as well as being great things to do, they're ways of controlling basic thought and emotion.
Totally, yeah.
And so again, that idea isn't new. You'll find it in Patanjali. I don't think you'll find it, as far as I know, in the Christian church, that's another reason why you do it. But you will find it in yoga. But you won't find this fact, though. You'll be helping the sacred ones. You'll be helping the supreme lords of karma. Now, why is that? Why would that be? Why would it help them? But if you think about it, they don't even have to be here. They don't have to be in this kind of existence at all. They have sacrificed their bliss, these great karmic supreme lords. To do this, they've sacrificed, I think the Master Jesus says, millions of units of time energy. Sorry, millions of units of time, not of time energy, of time, to do this. Now, if we are controlling our thoughts and actions, if we are being good, if we're being tolerant and so forth, we are cooperating with them. If we aren't, there is a demand. We are placing a demand upon them to teach us.
Wow, this is the thing, isn't it?
We're placing a demand on them to educate us, to create those karmic conditions that we need to evolve. And they will, and they do. But how much greater would it be if we took that off, that burden? They don't have shoulders, but if they did, and took that upon ourselves and did it ourselves. Because there's two ways of gaining karmic experience. One is by cooperating with it, which was the whole essence of Dr. George King. Cooperate with karma. There's a wonderful, it's very rare actually, to receive a transmission from Jupiter. Their energies are often used, and I do believe manifest through composers of music.
Oh yeah, okay.
As an energy of music. And it's a certain type of energy, and you can, I believe, hear it in certain particular composers. It's energy that makes you rise up. You can hear this sort of, it doesn't necessarily mean the music is going up in notes, but it's a build, it's raising you. It's that kind of energy that often would come, I believe. But because that's a key word, I think it's the most commonly used word
from those
transmissions, rise. But which is why we named our Meditation with Music album Rise, was one reason anyway. But in this particular transmission, this is from memory now, I don't have this in front of me, but it's something like, you came not to be the slave of the karmic wheel, but to be the master of its every revolution. That's a great aphorism.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't mean you're going to master the law, it means you're going to master your own karmic pattern, your own karma. And when we do that, we're cooperating with them, and then we're reducing the demand upon their energy. This is as I see it. This is my take now. I haven't heard this from anywhere else. This is what I take it to mean. And so, therefore, it helps them. That's the only way it can help them.
I see.
Whereas if we go down the road of involution, they have the task, the ongoing task of creating conditions whereby we will turn and change, maybe painfully. Who knows what experiences we're going to require. And these are beings of more compassion than we know the meaning of the word compassion.
Totally.
And they have to bring about those conditions for wayward intelligences, not even just on this planet, throughout the galaxy, wherever they may be, if they are wayward, to bring them back into line. Now, Dr. King was in line. He was in line with karmic determination, and everything he did was designed. It comes back to that quote which I read last week about, well, I know it pretty well. I won't go word for word, but karma is pressure towards conformity. It's conformity with that law, conformity with those lords, conformity with his karmic gods.
Yeah, I think there's two things that really stand out there for me. One is the value of having a teacher who can help you to live your life in such a way that you are, in fact, cooperating with the karmic gods in this way, which is, what he gave us from his own outstanding wisdom, but also what he gave us as a channel for teachings like the 9 freedoms and, of course, the 12 lessons, which you've read from there. But also the fact that by following his path, just by doing that, and the example that he gave us, of course, but what he taught us to do in terms of service to the world as a whole in these powerful ways, even doing that, we are again cooperating with the karmic gods, because that's who he was, and that's the path that he left.
I mean, he was far more interested in what we were doing for the world than for what we were doing in our private, personal lives. I mean, people had foibles, people made mistakes. I'm one of them. People's conduct wasn't always what it should have been. I'm one of them, and others in different ways. And he would correct people. He didn't like it. He didn't approve of it per se, but I found him to be extremely tolerant, extremely forgiving, and he didn't see it as the big thing that so many people on level 1 see it. I actually believe on the higher levels, much as they don't do it themselves and they don't think it's great, some of these personal failings and so forth, it's not the big deal that it's made on the lower, on this level, possibly on level 2, I'm assuming. The big thing is, what are you doing for the world? And that was what Dr. King vibrated to. Are you working hard? Are you cooperating with the cosmic plan? And if so, how? And how can your abilities be used? And how can I, your master, enable you to be in a position to use them in the most effective manner possible?
Yeah, because when we think about, okay, what does it mean to follow, in the footsteps of Dr. King, to become a disciple of his, to follow the path that he left us.
Like you, for one.
Yeah, it's sort of like, this is the spirit that we need to adopt in terms of like the way that we think and the way that we work, the way that we apply ourselves on the spiritual path or in our life.
I was at his side in the last 10 years of his life, either with him physically. I spent a lot of time in Los Angeles and Santa Barbara, or on the phone, working with it's him, but I was advising on the moves he made for people like your good self and generations going forward.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So that they could put themselves, if they chose to, that's an entirely personal, voluntary matter. If they chose to, in a karmic position, because I think that's the secret of life, and I learned it from him. To put yourself in a karmic position to do the most good. Not to say I'd like to do this, I wish I could do that. I would like to be in that location so that I could do the other. But to put yourself, through whatever means, lawful means and correct means, you can, to be in that position. And this involves obviously money, obviously health, obviously your accommodation, the whole thing. But in the end, he created a situation where someone like you could take part in Operation Sunbeam, which you have done, to operate the spiritual energy radiator, and for people to go on the Saturn mission in his absence. And this wasn't just a logistical thing. It was a karmic thing, a karmic move, because the pressure is upon us to earn those positions. Some people sometimes can't understand why someone devotes themselves to a life of service and then appears not to get good karma or to suffer in some way, be it through health or in some other way. And it doesn't always happen. I'm not even going to say it generally happens, but it can happen. And there can be one or two reasons for that. But one reason is, it's not just doing these great things, it's putting oneself in the karmic position to do them. Because once one's in that karmic position and is paid that karmic price, if you like, it's going to pay dividends throughout our future lives. If I look at some, humble person like myself, many years ago, Dr. King told me back in 1986 I could become an adept in this life. And I'm not claiming I am an adept, don't get me wrong, or a master, but he told me that. And I've had certain experiences. I attribute that to the opportunities he gave me, and particularly the global ones, the cosmic ones. Those are the things now that are going to put us in the position to gain the greatest states. I mean, going to Operation Prayer Power is you go there to serve those who can go there. No, or let's not say going to it. Let's say supporting it.
Okay.
Because we have wonderful members, for example, of the Aetherius Society in Nigeria and in Ghana who can't go to Operation Prayer Power, but they support the society as best they can. So therefore, they're indirectly supporting, or maybe directly supporting in certain cases, Operation Prayer Power. That is also an enabler for our own evolution. This is the big change, and we talked some weeks ago about cosmic morality, if there is such a thing. That's really where we're at now, going forward. And he absolutely pioneered it, and he lived it. And to him, this was the important thing. What are you doing for the cosmic plan? What are you doing in service generally? And not just doing in service, are you performing the maximum service that you can perform in your life? Because we're all in different situations.
I think, and especially coming to this question that this point you're making about, that putting yourself in the position allows you to evolve, in a much more advanced way. And I just wanted to come back to, tying that into the relationship that you can form with him.
Yes.
Because we're kind of talking about the path and everything. And then, but actually doing all of these things also forms a link directly with him as a master, doesn't it?
It absolutely does, because, and you must have experienced that yourself. When you, and there's a beautiful extract in The King Who Came to Earth, right towards the end, about the link you forge with your teacher. And what happens if you follow the teachings diligently and earnestly, and the practices and the work given to you through the offices of your master. So he's not physically alive, but you're still doing that now. Anyone can do it now. If you practice the 12 blessings, you're practicing it in the way that Dr. King taught us to practice it. This wasn't even the Master Jesus. It was Dr. King who taught us how to practice it. The Master Jesus gave it to us, and so forth. If you're doing these things, if you're using the healing technique that he taught, all the way through to, if you're on an Operation Sunbeam team, all the way through to studying the 9 freedoms which he brought to earth and explained, you are, by your diligent study, practice, work, you are, and support financially in certain cases for these non-profit missions that we do, you are creating a link with him, absolutely. And what happens? You start to tap at a subliminal level, you might say, or almost like an etheric level, into the consciousness of your master. And you'll start to draw on that, not just the actual things you're doing or teachings you're looking at, but his energy, and it will start to come to you. Now, we talked last week about being in his physical presence, which I was privileged to do, and then you're within his aura. But that aura hasn't gone just because his physical has gone. His energy, his presence is here, and you can create a link with it, and you can take that as far as you want, all the way through, I believe, to being a disciple of Dr. George King, even in these days.
Yeah, no, that's, I think, incredibly inspiring for anyone coming kind of as the next generation here, and future generations, of course, who haven't had the chance to be with him physically. Although I will say, even, non-physical experiences with him, put it that way, that you can have where you've either seen his presence, whether that's that you might have had experience with him, in a dream, and to what extent those are symbolic or actually real experiences, I guess is, you could, but in both cases they still have significant meaning to you on the spiritual path.
He came to me in a dream while he was still alive.
Oh, really?
Physically alive, yes. I'd been given a mantra, which is known as the Brahma mantra. which is a mantra that he used himself, Dr. King, but I'd been given it, not by him, but by a very, very good friend of mine who was in the Aetherius Society, and who had access and seemed to have a sort of unlimited access, I used to think, to old yogic writings and sources. He and I spent many an hour perusing these, and among them was one which contained the Brahma mantra. And so this friend of mine gave me this. He was a close disciple of Dr. King as well. I'm not going to name him because of the story, as you'll hear, but from that, we felt we'd got it from this book and started practicing it. And I was practicing it when I went back to England. He was in America. I then had a dream shortly after this, and I was doing it quite regularly. And he came to me in the dream, and he said, he told me off. He said, you shouldn't be doing that mantra without my permission in this dream. So I took that quite seriously. I thought, I'm going to wait for a chance. I'm going to try and mention this to him. And I did mention it to him when I had the first chance. So I stopped doing the mantra. When we were working on Realize Your Inner Potential, the book, it's a wonderful book. I have to say, I was honored to co-author it, but it's not my book, it's his book. And he was putting mantras in the book. So we were talking about mantras and what was going to go in the book. And he was very generous, even more generous than I even asked him to be. Gave 5 mantras in that book. They come straight from him. That's another thing. If you get a mantra from Dr. King, you've created a link. He's your master. He's the master who's given them to you.
Yeah.
And that's an initiation from him. And if you get it from that book, it's an initiation from him. He knew that when the book was being prepared. Every single exercise in that book, even though I finished it after he passed on, he approved personally. He went through it one by one.
Wow. Yeah.
But anyway, I took that opportunity to mention this dream because we were talking about mantra. And he didn't bat an eyelid. It was his last year of physical life. It was around his birthday. I was there for his last birthday. Alison cooked him his last birthday dinner, actually.
Did she?
Yeah, that was on January the 23rd, 1997. So it was around that period. Yeah. He wrote the foreword to that book, or approved it, on his birthday, his last physical birthday. Wow. So anyway, I brought this up. So he said to me, I told him about the dream, and I said, I didn't name the person I'd got it from. I didn't want to get him into trouble, which it would have probably done. Yeah. But all he said to me, looked at me, he sat sitting at his desk in Santa Barbara, and he said, in his small home there, his bungalow, and he said, say it to me now. So I said the mantra to him as I was doing it. And he corrected me on the pronunciation of one of the syllables. And it's interesting because to him, mantra was sound. It wasn't words. Otherwise, you could just translate it into English.
Sure.
It's the sound. And he talked about that, and the sound is an energy. And sometimes his pronunciation was slightly different from the spelling, the translated spelling from Sanskrit. So he corrected me on one of the words. And accordingly, I changed in the light of that correction, and then I took it that I'd now
received that from him.
But that came out of this dream.
Wow!
So I then have the Brahma mantra from him, and I found out since that he didn't give that to anybody else in the society or anybody that I know of. So I've now got to decide what do I do about people like yourself? What do I do with that knowledge? I had another initiation from him. I will share this with you.
Go on.
The last time I saw him alive, I was actually physically alive. I was in Los Angeles about to conduct a ceremony there in the afternoon. It was a Saturday morning, and he phoned me up and he said, I want to see you for 15 minutes. And I was in LA, so it's like a roughly 2-hour drive from LA to Santa Barbara. I said, certainly, Master. He said, come. He said, I know you've got a ceremony this afternoon, so just come and see me for 15 minutes. So I drive down up to Santa Barbara, walk in. He's sitting in his armchair, very poorly by then. This is his final months. And something he never liked was people kneeling, unless it was during a ceremony. I mean, I remember giving him healing in his bed, and to get comfortable sometimes, to heal him through his feet, I would kneel down, and he'd tell me, oh, I don't want anyone kneeling in my presence.
I see.
So it was actually more uncomfortable to sit cross-legged. But it doesn't matter. So that wasn't a thing he liked. But on this occasion, he said, come in, kneel down at my side. So I knelt down, and he gave me a mudra. And he told me how to do the mudra, and it's quite difficult to do, by the way. It ties in with certain breathing exercise. But so I'm still work in progress, actually getting that absolutely right even now.
Wow.
But nevertheless, he gave it to me, and he said that's like I don't think he said ultimate, but like very high. He said there's only one problem, he said, though, with this. I remember him saying this to me, with this mudra. He says it might give you a headache. No, sorry. It might cause you to levitate. And then you might get a headache. That's okay. That's a problem. Thank you for that. Hasn't happened, by the way, at this point. But and then we had a hug and a farewell, and that's the last time I saw him. So that was an extremely unusual thing for him to do, just in the daytime.
Never heard that.
Sitting in his And again, that's another thing that I've got that I haven't passed on, that nobody else I've found out now has been given. So these are things I'm going to have to decide what to do about. But it goes to show it was quite rare for him. I remember saying before I was consecrated as a bishop, we would go off as someone who's going to be ordained as a minister or undergo an initiation of any kind, really, in the society. We'll go off the evening before, at least, if not longer, and contemplate, do practices, prepare. And I was going off to do that the night before he performed this wonderful initiation for Monica and myself, in that order. She was before me, and then me, in the same ceremony. I always reminded of that. You're the first bishop. But he did say, I said to him, well, I'll go off, and I'm going to go off. I remember saying to him, and I'm going to do some practices, and I'm going to prepare myself. He said, I don't care what you do. Go on. And it wasn't rude, but just go. He didn't want to hear about stuff like that. He thought you did that quietly. And he didn't talk about his own abilities. And sometimes it could appear to be quite harsh. I mean, I do remember being in LA, and I often had the privilege of watching television with him in the evening when he was in LA, or Santa Barbara, but there'd be others. Sometimes he'd just have one person over and watch television, and it would often be Monique, but sometimes she wasn't watching the same thing. And so I remember him calling her. He had a sort of speaker system, and I was staying on the property, and he'd say, Richard, so you could hear, everyone could actually hear it, but he'd say, come over and watch television with me. Now, that night, I had, as it happened, almost a migraine. I had a terrible headache, and I was lying on bed, and I could reply to him through the speaker system. And I said, well, I'm very sorry, Master, but if you don't mind, I've got a very bad headache, and I really could do with resting tonight. I'm just not up to watching anything. He said, no, come on over, come on. And that sounds really harsh, in the face of it, that's harsh.
Insensitive to you.
So over I come. Okay. And he says, have a drink. Well, the last thing I wanted was a drink. So, but, I'm polite, and I have a drink, and he has a drink, and we're watching this television. And all the way through this film, which was some kind of thriller film, I'm not sure which one now, he was nudging me, hey,
That's so funny.
And we came to halfway through, he'd have a little break, a little kind of intermission, as it were. And we came to the break, and the headache had completely gone, which defies what should have happened. So this is just an illustration of him. Again, I said to him, the headache's gone. I said, thank you so much for the healing. He said, healing? What healing now? This is the way he was. He wasn't going to advertise these things. He believed in keeping his cards close to his chest in all ways, even on very big things. You never quite knew. And I do remember in his lifetime, especially in Los Angeles, where they were on duty so around him a lot, it was a constant topic of conversation, trying to unreveal the enigma of this master. It was like a mystery. What's he doing now? Why did he do this? And
There's the mysteries that will, maybe lifetimes even turn around.
But you can do it now, though.
Yes,
I mean, we try on this show in a humble way to unravel some of these mysteries, or to get to the bottom of this, coming back to this. How have we helped constructively today the Supreme Lords of Karma? But for him, that was instinct.
Yeah.
He was a karmic agent all the way through.
I think what I got out of this show myself personally is just kind of like a deeper understanding of what his path represents.
Yeah.
And if we're gonna and someone who might aspire to follow in his path, or even curious about what that might mean or look like, you kind of get a deeper sense of what it would mean to follow in the footsteps of these teachings, and thereby form this link with him and begin to benefit from this outstanding karmic and spiritual magic in your life, even if you haven't physically met him.
Brilliantly put.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody, it's Darren here. Thanks for tuning into the show. Now, if you enjoyed that episode, don't forget to subscribe for more wisdom from the 9 Freedoms. If you'd like to find out more about the 9 Freedoms, about Mars Sector 6 by Dr. George King, go to our website, that's aetherius.org. Richard and I love hearing from you, receiving your comments, your questions on your spiritual experiences, and talking about them on the show. So do write to us, share them with us at spiritualfreedom@richardlawrence.co.uk. Always remember that service is the jewel in the rock of attainment. See you next time.